Thank you so much for having me. Just by way of introduction on this site, so before I want to give you a tour of the site, but before we go there, I just wanted to tell you why we decided to go with an integrated approach to reporting. By way of background, 2 years ago, we really had very, very little sustainability, ESG, whatever you would like to call it, type of reporting. What we had was very bare bones, and we knew that there was an opportunity for us to really enhance our reporting. And we had to try to figure out what approach we would take and how to best convey Travelers' approach to sustainability and our efforts in this space. And we went with an integrated approach for really two reasons. One is that at Travelers, we don't think about environmental, social, and governance factors as something separate. We don't even call them that. They're just things that we do as part of our business strategy. And we have a keen understanding here that sustainability really refers to the whole panoply of risks and opportunities that a company faces, and how it's managing those risks and taking advantage of those opportunities for the purpose of enhancing its own economic sustainability over the long term. And that really, in the end of the day, ESG really should be, and at Travelers it is, about value rather than values. It's just part of how the company creates value over time. And so because all of these items were already, all these matters were integrated into our business strategy and just how we operate as a company, integrated reporting made sense to us. And the other reason was that we went out and spoke to our investors in advance of coming up with an approach to reporting. And we heard very frequently from our investors a certain frustration with sustainability reports that are more siloed and that don't make the connections between business strategy and the environmental and social initiatives that are discussed in the report. And so that was something that we felt that we could give our investors, especially because that's just how we think about it at Travelers. So that's really the background. In terms of what sustainability means at Travelers, something a little bit more personalized, that's really what we started the website with. So when you open the site and you look at the landing page, there are several different pictures that cycle through at random, depending on when you open the site. But the actual text is really what sustainability means at Travelers. So at Travelers, we really think about sustainability as having three legs. One is performance, financial performance. That's our business strategy and how we execute on our long-term strategy. Transforming for tomorrow. That's how we execute on our innovation agenda to ensure that we transform in a way that ensures that our competitive advantages remain as relevant tomorrow as they are today. And the third leg is what we would call the Travelers Promise. That is how we fulfill our promise to our customers, our communities, and our employees. And as I said, we feel very strongly that fulfilling that commitment to those stakeholders is directly related to our ability to provide value to our shareholders over the long term. So the site kind of introduces what sustainability means at Travelers. If we were to go to the CEO message, which introduces the site, you kind of see that we go into those three items. We discuss what perform means, what transform means, and what the Travelers Promise means. And I think I'll leave it to you to read this later, but Alan Schnitzer, our CEO, ends by saying, for Travelers down here, for Travelers, sustainability comes down to this. Only by successfully delivering on our perform and transform agenda will we earn the resources we need to keep the Travelers Promise. And only by faithfully keeping the Travelers Promise will we earn the support of key stakeholders essential to our perform and transform success. That's how we're going to deliver results next quarter and succeed for the next quarter century. So you see there that concept from the top of the organization as to the interrelatedness among those three categories, and how, you know, what some would call ESG is really integrated into the company's business strategy. So just going back to the home page, the way that this is structured, this whole website is structured, is that when you scroll down the page, the first thing you really see beyond that quote is our competitive advantages. These are our competitive advantages from a business perspective. These are things that we talk about with our investors regularly in our Investor Day presentations. But you have here our 5 competitive advantages. Of course, you can click on any one of them and read more about that competitive advantage that we have as a company. And what you see here is that underlying our competitive advantages are these 3 key enablers that we talk about as a company: our talent and expertise, our industry-leading data and analytics, and our financial strength. But ultimately, underlying these 5 are what we've decided to call our drivers for sustained value, and that's what's in the center right here. When we click on that, we come down further on the page to the 16 topics that we've determined ultimately ladder up to value creation at Travelers. They're all part of the value creation mosaic. And in this introductory language to the drivers of sustained value, we again state that our long-term success depends not only on our business strategy and our competitive advantages, but also on keeping our promise to be there for our customers, communities, and employees. And for this reason, we take an integrated approach to sustained value creation. So there you have that concept of integration, not only in reporting, but in how we think of these things. And here are the 16 topics that we've identified as a company as relating to our value creation and being part of our value creation model. And we don't differentiate down here between what some would call an environmental or social factor or traditional governance or other business factors. So for example, we have here business strategy or capital and risk management, which are really business topics. But we also include diversity and inclusion, and we include public policy, ethics and values, et cetera, and of course, traditional governance. So these are really the 16 that we've come up with, and I'll show you a little bit later on a section on the website where we discuss how we came up with those 16 topics. Let's see, so we don't break them down here with respect to what kind of category they would be in, environmental or social or anything like that. But when you do go up to the navigation bar, you could see how we grouped them. These are the same sections, the same area. So under company, there is a company landing page where we discuss our company, and then underneath we have our business strategy and competitive advantages, our capital and risk management, and our investment management. This takes you outside of this web page. We didn't really know exactly where to put this, but these 3 sections are really the main sections under company. Governance is just our traditional governance. And here, we didn't want to call these items, environmental and social. We just see them as additional drivers of sustained value, and I'm not really sure you can group all of these as environmental or social. Maybe you can, but that's just not how we think about it as a company. And so here we have 12 additional topics: climate strategy, community, customer experience, data privacy and cybersecurity, disaster response and preparedness, D&I, eco-efficient operations, ethics and values, human capital management, innovation, public policy, and safety and health. And so I can go in and show you how we've structured these and to give you a sense of what we've done with each of the pages. But this is the general structure of the website. If we were to go into one of these, so for example, we could go into human capital management, and each of the pages is structured similarly. What we do is we have this blue ribbon here where we provide here in the center one statistic that we feel is relevant to our initiatives. And what we've heard more and more from investors is that they'd like to see quantitative metrics. We've really attempted to provide those when we felt that we had information that is accurate, where that information is meaningful to our investors, and where we felt that providing that information would not have significant unintended consequences. So here, as an example, you could see that we provided our voluntary employee turnover rate for the year. We also have some news cycling through here that's relevant to the page. But the main part of the page is down here, where we split each topic. So here it's human capital management. We split each topic into various subcategories, Each of our pages begins with an approach section where you have a little bit of an overview of what our approach is to that topic. But here, for example, we have subcategories depending, on the topic. So here, because it's human capital management, we discuss culture and leadership, engagement and inclusion, learning and development, performance and succession, talent acquisition, and total rewards, which relates to compensation and benefits. So we feel that these areas here are really all together discuss very well what our human capital management policies and practices are. And so if you were an investor and you only read these sections here, you would really get a very good view of human capital management at Travelers. But at the bottom of the page, regardless of where you are on this page, at the bottom we have this ribbon called Key Initiatives, where either an investor or another stakeholder who might be more interested in some of these highlight stories could click in and read more about it. So for example, here we have She Travels, which is our initiative to advance women's careers in insurance. So if we were to click on it, it's a little vignette of how we do that and what that initiative is actually about. You could just click out of it and you're back to the main page. And of course, there are other initiatives as well here. Sorry about that. So you can go to any one of these pages and see more. This is very similar. Sorry about the cough. So this is our community page. It's really structured very similarly. I apologize. There are some different sections here. But again, key initiatives at the bottom of the page. In any event, I think that gives you a general sense of what the pages look like. I wanted to point out actually that in the company page where we talk about our business strategy here, this is unique among sustainability reports, obviously not among integrated reports, but we do spell out very clearly our long-term strategy for value creation. And this goes on for quite a while. But we here put together for the first time, I mean, a lot of this is not new disclosure. A lot of this was pieced together from various annual reports, but here we put all of it together for the first time to really articulate our long-term business strategy. What we do have at the bottom here that I wanted to point out was really telling our investors that underlying that financial strategy and the innovation agenda is the Traveler's Promise, which is what we talked about earlier. So it is on the home page and it is in the CEO letter. It's also in this section about business strategy. I also wanted to point out another thing, which is that we tried as much as possible to highlight on the website shared value. So where it's not obvious why we're doing something, it might be obvious what the benefit is to the community or to the environment, but it may be not so obvious to travelers. We tried to spell that out. So in the community section, for example, where we thought those connections might be less obvious, with respect to most of the initiatives that we discuss at the bottom, we do spell out the community benefits of the program, but also travelers' benefits. We saw that in talking to investors before launching this website, before even coming up with an approach, many investors were saying to us, oh, we don't really care so much about that initiative because it's philanthropy and we're not interested in your philanthropy. But then we found that when we delve deeper in the conversation with them and we're able to show them why that initiative is not just philanthropy, it's good for travelers in terms of increasing employee engagement or potentially helping us to source talent from previously underrepresented pools of talent or things like that, we were able to really get their interest. So we tried to spell those out here. Here's another example. And we did the same thing on our eco-efficient operations page where we spell out how, not on this one, not on every single one, but here how something might be good for the environment, but also good for travelers as well. So ultimately, if you look at the top navigation bar here, the idea that we were trying to convey is that the business topics that are under company, plus our traditional governance, plus these dozen other key drivers of sustained value, ultimately lead to the company's financial performance. That's really the concept here. And in this financial performance section, we really discuss, it's really a summary of the company's financials from the annual report. So we have our 2018 results here and some other sections about how we deliver value over time, our financial highlights. So things that you would find in the annual report, but are also here as well. So those are really the main areas of the site, I would say. I also wanted to show you a few things under resources here. So this is the substance of the site. Under resources, I think it's really important that we have this section here called About Our Sustainability Reporting. And it really allows us to explain to our shareholders and our other stakeholders how we arrived at the 16 topics that we arrived at. Here's the explanation. We talk about how we engage with institutional investors representing approximately 50% of the company's outstanding shares at the time. That was a really big part of the process for us, a really important part of the process. What we heard there really served as the foundation for our approach to reporting and the frameworks and the standards that we've aligned our disclosures with. And then in addition to that, we've conducted a formal prioritization assessment where we were able to take into account the views of our other stakeholders, including our customers, our employees, and our agents and brokers, to really ensure that we were getting the right topics down. And here again are the 16 topics that I showed you the icons for earlier. With respect to frameworks and standards, so clearly you know by now that we aligned ourselves with the Integrated Reporting Council framework, and we discussed that here. We actually mention somewhere on here that, and here we go, in particular, integrated reporting aligns closely with our approach to long-term value creation, in which business strategy and performance are inextricably linked with fulfilling our commitments. So this is exactly what we were talking about earlier, and we put it on our website. But there are other frameworks and standards that we've decided to align ourselves with. So we do provide here a standalone SASB report for the first time, as well as a standalone TCFD report. With respect to the IR framework, we've provided a content index that maps out the disclosures on this entire website to the IR content elements, as well as to elements of the GRI framework. So we've really been able to hit on 4 frameworks or sets of standards. The other thing I'd mention is you can download here the entire website into one PDF. We've heard from people that it's more convenient to be able to see everything in one place. It'll be easier to search for certain things, so we do provide that option. And we do have something here called ESG Analyst Data, which is kind of a tear sheet, and I could open that for you. This is basically a summary view of the metrics, right? It's not really a summary of any of the qualitative information, but here you have some of the economic metrics that we mentioned on the site in one tear sheet, some environmental data that we provide on our website, social, like workforce data, human rights, supplier management and diversity, some ethics information, community information, and then lots of governance information, as well as our information on our sustainability disclosures generally. I think that pretty much wraps up the view of our report. I'm happy to show additional pages as well if there's interest, but obviously can't go into every single page, but they're all structured pretty much in the same way.